Hi, this is a shiur discussing the conceptual idea of what a Seder is about, where the concept of Seder and the Pesach Seder fits in the overall structure of the Jewish year, and the theoretical and conceptual underpinnings to the ideas that we discuss, where they're sourced in Tanakh, and I hope you enjoy.
This call is being recorded.
Not available. I'm giving you shiur now. I'm not available. Hello.
Shimmy?
Hi,
I've got Moshe.
I'm Steve.
Hey, Steve.
Yossi.
Hey, Yossi. I think Shimmy's joining as well.
So I have to drink at home, right?
Yeah, you can do like a virtual l'chaim. How's everybody managing?
Yeah. Optimal term.
I think Morty's joined. People another minute or two, and then we'll get started. Oh, we've got Morty. Morty, can you hear us? Oh, Morty's on mute. Morty, looks like you're on mute.
Unmute.
Now I unmuted you, and I just unmuted Steve.
Am I?
Morty, you're back on mute. I don't know if you intended to be back. Oh, now you're off mute. A lot of muting and unmuting going on.
I figured this out, sort of. Okay, go away.
Okay, we'll give Jimmy one more minute because he said he was joining.
So how is this not just a phone thing?
It is.
Yeah, I mean it's a conference line. You can log in, and then if you wanted to like turn on your webcam, you can do that. The shiur also gets recorded this way, so that's helpful.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, no. You see, if you don't want to use your phone line, you can also do it over the internet with their app. So it's either a phone call.
I'm gonna download their app. Hold on one second. It's Uber app.
Yeah, Uber conference.
I'm already on the phone. I'm already on the phone.
All right, I'm sorry. I'm gonna mute myself. Hold on.
So basically, we're saying, Moshe, is that all of this is getting recorded?
It is. Yeah.
I think we got someone else joining, or someone left. I don't know. Okay. I think we can start. It's 9:05. So first of all, welcome everyone. I hope everybody is managing through all the craziness. So I wanted to get started on the Haggadah a little bit. But I know that a lot of attention, Pesach, I'm sure people are like, what do you mean Pesach? We just had Purim, right? But it is time to start kind of preparing. So I know the Haggadah gets a lot of, Maggid gets a lot of attention in terms of Divrei Torah, but the rest of the Haggadah not so much.
I just skip it.
What's that?
I just skip it.
Yeah, right. I think there's something about like karpas, and like if you rearrange the letters, you get samech perech, which is like something like that. Has anyone heard of that one before?
No.
No, I think it's from the Arizal that like if you rearrange the letters of karpas, you get samech perech, which is 60 are working the serach, like hard labor, and so that samech is like a remez to 600,000 Jews that were enslaved. That's I think the only other non-Maggid Dvar Torah that I can remember like in the past couple years. So I've been trying to give a little attention to some of the other parts of the Seder. So I figured for tonight we would start with Nirtza. That happens to be one of my favorite parts of the Seder because I like a lot of the songs. I'm hoping, does everyone, I should have asked this at the beginning, does everyone have a Haggadah in front of them?
Yes.
I do not.
Just nod your head. Just nod your head.
I'm nodding my
Okay. Any favorite Nirtza songs? Does anyone have a favorite Nirtza song?
I'm partial to one that's in Spanish. I can't really repeat it.
You know one in Spanish? Get out of here. Which one?
My in-laws are from Morocco.
That's awesome.
Yeah. This is one quesoniente something lente something. It's basically one is Hashem, but it's done in Spanish, and they shake their fingers like they're angry at everyone at the table. It's very funny.
Oh, that's cool. You have to teach me that one. My mother speaks Spanish. She does the manishtana in Spanish, but I've never heard a song at the end.
Yeah, so my in-laws do that also. That's cool.
Okay. Any other favorites? Preferably not in Spanish.
I mean, I also like Haggadah, but okay, that's pretty standard.
Good.
Where's
where's
Chasal Siddur?
Where's
That's
what?
Nirtza.
Chasal Siddur Pesach? That's Chasal Siddur Pesach is the beginning of Nirtza.
Yeah, put me in for that one.
Yeah, I'm a fan of that one too. So let's do a little digging on Nirtza, but I think to do that properly, we have to kind of take a step back and understand what a Seder is. I'm gonna just throw this out, and audience participation is very helpful for me because I can't see anybody. So what does Seder mean? Any takers?
Order.
Order?
Isn't that what it means?
Do we have any? Yeah. Well, I don't know. I'm asking.
Table setting.
Let's
No.
table setting.
Yeah,
How about this? Where else in Judaism or in like what we learn or do we have a Seder? Or do we reference the word the word Seder?
Learning. The learning Seder.
Yeah, you can have a Seder Hayom. We have a Seder. Tu B'Shvat has a Seder.
Right. So that's for sure true. We refer to it as a Seder Hayom, but we get that, I think, from the fact that Shas is Tishrei Sidrei Mishnah, right?
Right.
The Mishnayos are the Seder of Mishnayos, right?
Right.
Any other Seder type things that you can think of? I'm thinking particularly of something that we do every single day.
Daven from one.
Yeah, exactly. You daven from a siddur, right? A siddur is the same shoresh as Seder, right? And I think what is common to both the siddur and the Seder, and the Seder of Mishnayos as well, is that it's not just something that is organized. It's something that's organized towards a purpose, right? So when you have a siddur, you're starting off with Psuki de Zimra, and you're building up to something. You're building up to Shema and Shemona Esrei. That's like the apex of the davening. The same thing is true with the Seder HaMishnayos. You start with Zrayim, inanimate objects, and then you progress to the halachas of human being, and then you progress to the Mishnayos about Kachim and Taharos, right? The most spiritually refined parts of our avoda are in that Seder, right? So if that's true, if a Seder is not just something that's organized, but it's organized towards something, it's progressing towards a climax, so then our Seder should be the same way, right? We're starting at the beginning with at whatever level we're at. When we progress through the Seder till we get to Nirtza, we're going somewhere. It's not just these are things that happen to be in the order that they're in, but they're in the order that they're in order to get us somewhere. Does that make sense?
Okay.
And we take these things very seriously. The what are they called? The Simone HaSeder, right? Does anyone have? I'm sure everyone has that song, right? At the beginning, you go through the list of all the things that we're going to, like the 15 Simonim. You know what I'm talking about? Kadesh Orchatz, that whole list.
No, I don't know much. I think you should sing it for us.
It was a valiant effort. I knew someone was going to try to get me to sing them. But those Simonim, which by the way, we don't have anywhere else. You don't have any other ritual that has Simonim like the Seder does, but they're there to reinforce. And as far as I know, no one has any idea where these came from. It's not like a lot of the Haggadah is from the Gemara, basically all of it.
Right.
But the Simone HaSeder are not. They're not really sure who instituted that, but they're there to call our attention to the fact that we're progressing through these 15 steps, right? And there's actually, there's a lot of ramazim just in the number 15 in terms of like the Dayenu we have is also 15. The Pesach is on the 15th day of Nisan, and if you look, I don't know if anyone has access to it, but there's a terrific Haggadah by Rabbi Naor. He translates Rav Kook's Haggadah called "Springtime for the World," where he goes into the symbolism behind the 15 and the Simanei HaSeder, and I highly recommend it if you want to borrow a copy. I'm more than happy to lend it out. But the Simanei HaSeder are there to call our attention to the fact that we're going through this process, and it's an intentional process to get us somewhere. I think the way to understand that is to put the Seder that we are going to be involved in into the broader context of the year. So we know that there's a halacha, shloshim yom kodem lachag, 30 days before a holiday, you start to learn the halachos of the chag. So the Gemara learns that from Moshe, who started teaching the halachos of Pesach 30 days before Pesach. But 30 days before Pesach is a very important day. Does anyone know what 30 days before Pesach is?
Isn't that Purim?
Shushan Purim, right?
Yeah.
So that's very interesting that the source for learning about Pesach starts at Purim. Why would that be? What's the connection between Purim and Pesach? Any takers?
Yeah, they didn't by the Suda. That was Pesach, right?
What? Say that again?
Wasn't Esther's Suda on Pesach?
Yes, Esther. Yeah. The Esther Suda was on Pesach. They fasted actually on the first day of Pesach. That was the decree that she made. It wasn't just the 3-day fast. It wasn't just on any day. She was telling Mordechai you have to fast over Pesach.
Right.
Anything else that is thematic between? Look, we just read the Megillah. Come on. Anything else that's thematic in the Megillah related that would be related to Pesach and the Mitzrayim?
Kibul Yehudim Mashi Kibul Kvar, right? That it whatever happened on Pesach, well, it's really Har Sinai, happened again on Purim in a different way.
Right. That's I think a little bit more Shavuos and Matan Torah.
Okay.
So
okay.
So Esther says a very interesting thing to Achashverosh. When she goes to beg for the life of the Jewish people, she says, had we been sold as slaves, I would have remained silent, because that it wouldn't have been worth it to pain you. Tsar is the lashon of cause you discomfort. If we would have been slaves, then no big deal. Slavery, that wouldn't have registered, for Esther to go in and bother Achashverosh. It's only because Haman is actually going to kill people that's why Esther is bothering to speak up. So that's a really interesting and weird statement. It's hard for me to believe. If the Jews had been sold into slavery, Esther wouldn't have done anything. Does that strike you as strange?
Yeah, that doesn't seem right.
Well, the thing is that
slavery is different than being, death, but it's still.
Plus, she gave up of her life. She would have been killed. So the question is, could she give up her own life, put herself in jeopardy to save somebody from slavery?
Right.
But you don't think Mordechai would have had the same conversation with her, like, hey, this all happened for a reason. We're being sold into slavery. Maybe you should go do something about that.
I mean, I have your point. I just think, okay, no, okay, we'll go with that.
No, look, I think we kind of have a bias because, hey, slavery is not as bad as getting killed, so we can kind of see it from that perspective.
Because you got your 21st century thing going on there. That we all got to be treated nicely. We're good with slavery. We're good with slavery.
Okay, well, there's another part of what she says that I want to focus on specifically, where she says, "Ein hat-tsar shoveh b'nezek hamelech," that the tsar would not have been the word tsar specifically. It comes up continuously throughout the Megillah. I know you thought you signed up for a Pesach shiur, and I'm giving you a Megillah shiur, but the term tsar shows up throughout the Megillah constantly Haman is referred to all the time as Tzorer HaYehudim. He's the one that's causing the Jewish people tsar. And that same shoresh, the tzadik resh shoresh, is the shoresh of Mitzrayim. That's what the essence of Mitzrayim is that concept of tsar, a meitzar. Mitzrayim, you have the mem in front of, but it's still the same root, the two-letter shoresh. The Radak talks about having a two-letter shoresh, but the meitzar is just an entity that causes tsar. It projects, the mem means that it projects that concept outward. So Mitzrayim is in essence that same tsar that the Jewish people were going through. That's actually why we don't say Hallel, right? The Gemara talks, why don't we say Hallel on Purim? So the Gemara says, because Akate Abdi Achashverosh Anan. We're still slaves to Achashverosh. That's a really weird thing.
Wow.
We even say Hallel on Pesach because we say Halu Abdi Hashem v'lo Abdi Paro. But we can't say Hallel on Purim because Akati Abdi Achashverosh Anan. That's really weird.
Right? It's a little overstating it. It's just a mas, right? It says it's just the fact that we are avodim. That's a little overstating it, right?
Right. We weren't 100%. We weren't literally slaves to Paro to Achashverosh, but we were under his jurisdiction.
Right. But is that your point? Your point is that it's overstated for a reason. Is that what you're saying?
Right. Yeah. My point is that whatever happened at Pesach to take us out of Mitzrayim, out of that Meitzar, hadn't yet happened by Achashverosh. Meaning there was still there's still an incomplete relationship to the concept of Tsar. The Rav Hirsch actually traces that same shoresh, that Tzadi Resh or Mem Tzadi Resh shoresh. He relates it to a Metzora, to Tzaras, which I think is really interesting because that Tsar Lashon, that Tzadi Resh shoresh, seems to be related to speech specifically. So you have Haman is called the Tzorer HaYehudim, right? So Chazal say there was no one who knew how to speak Lashon Hara like Haman, and it goes through why Haman was calling the Jewish people Am Mefuzar, Mefurad. It goes through all the different ways that Haman was trying to manipulate Achashverosh and speak Lashon Hara about the Jewish people. The same thing is true by a Metzora. The reason a Metzora gets Tzaras is because he abused his Lashon. He spoke Lashon Hara. And even in Mitzrayim, you have, again, that same idea that there's a concept that the Galus of Mitzrayim is related to Lashon, and that's why we have Pesach. One of the Ramazim, the most famous Ramazim about Pesach is if you break up the word Pesach to Pesach, so it's a mouth that speaks. Has anyone heard that one before?
Yes.
So Pesach, at its very essence, is related to this same concept of tsar. It's related to how are we going to deal with the Lashon Hara, with the exile of Lashon that is Mitzrayim. That's what Mitzrayim is in its essence. The way we deal with that is through Pesach, through our conversation, through what literally takes place at the Seder.
Okay.
So the concept that Lashon is in Gullus is why that's why we say Akati Abdi Achashverosh Anan, that there was an aspect of the Gullus Lashon that existed in Achashverosh's time that had not been addressed, but was addressed in the Geula of Mitzrayim. And what that is essentially what we go through in our Haggadah, right? We basically spend the whole night finding ways to make our peh, to make our speech and our mouths holier and more roy to go into Geula, to come out of that gulf. So you start, let's say, even before the Seder, there's a fast, there's Tainis Bechoros, right? That's there to start refining the how a person relates to what they eat. Then you make Kiddush and you have Karpas, right? Which is essentially a stand-in for Maror. you're eating something, but you're eating something that's bitter, and we don't even dip it in charoset. There's a lot of halachic reasons why, and we're not going to get into a lot of that. But the concept is the beginning of your seder is bitter. It's not you don't have a refined peh yet. Then you break the matzah because you're eating the te'avon. This is also something that Rav Kook talks about, that you're not eating like a refined, fully dignified Shabbos meal. You're eating in a way that shows that you're still impoverished, that it's lechem oni. You haven't yet achieved that geula until you continue to refine your path. So then you start into Magid, and as you start saying Divrei Kedusha, as you go through Magid, you're refining the path more and more until you can get to the point where at the end of Magid you have the beginnings like a shemetz of Hallel. You can start to see how the conversation in Magid goes from just speaking Divrei Torah to saying Shira. Then when you're able to do that, you can go again to Maror, but this time the Maror gets dipped in Charos. You remove that bitterness, and suddenly you've refined your peh more and more. Then you proceed after Shulchan Aruch to the Afikomen, right? Now the person's peh is able to actually engage in eating a korban. I mean, that's essentially what the Afikomen is, right? It's a stand-in for the korban Pesach. That's why we don't eat anything afterwards, because we just had the most spiritually refined eating that we could possibly have with the korban Pesach. Finally, we go from there to Hallel and Nirtza. That's how Nirtza is really the culmination of the whole experience, because, excuse me, now you're able to sing Shira. Singing Shira is the highest level of what you can do with your peh. That's why there's a minhag from the Vilna Gaon. Some people even say Shira Shirim after the Haggadah, like way after everything is done and people are like passed out at the table and all you really want to do is clean up and go to bed. There's still a minhag for some people to stay up and say Shira Shirim, because Shira Shirim is Kodesh Kedoshim, Chazal say. It's the most holiest type of song, which is the most holiest type of speech that you can possibly use your peh for. That's literally what you're doing as you go through this Seder, is trying to refine the peh to the point where you can take lashon, where you can take your speech out of guns. Does that make sense? You can see kind of a microcosm of this if you look at Moshe Rabbeinu himself. So Moshe Rabbeinu, Moshe Rabbeinu is the guy who's a covered peh, right? Sorry, someone trying to say something?
No, I was just saying it made sense. Yes, I was agreeing.
So Moshe Rabbeinu, when he's born, when he's young, he's a covered peh. He's not able to speak. When he goes through the Geula, when he comes out of Mitzrayim, suddenly he's able to say Oz Yashir Moshe, right? That's the pinnacle of the revelation of HaKadosh Baruch Hu at the Yam. That's what we talk about, that level of Shira. That's Moshe Rabbeinu. And there's actually a really interesting pasuk where the Jewish people come to Moshe at the Yam and they say, why'd you bother taking us here? We're just going to die. And Moshe says to them, don't worry, stay here and you'll see the salvation of Hashem, ve'atem tacharishun, and you will be quiet. The same language that Esther says to Achashverosh, that I would have, had the Jewish people been sold as slaves to Harashti, I would have been silent. Moshe uses that same language to tell the Jewish people, you're going to see the salvation, and all you need to do is be quiet. There's no need for speech anymore. That's, I think, essentially what Esther was saying when she's saying that Hacharashti, I would have been silent. It doesn't mean that I wouldn't have done anything to try to save the Jewish people. It means that had the Jewish people been sold as slaves, Hacharashti, I wouldn't have had any words. I wouldn't have been at a madrega where I could have addressed that type of evil, the tsar that Haman was perpetrating, because that type of evil is not something you can combat with lashon unless you have this idea of refining the peh. Okay, so just to break down very quickly what we've got so far. We have Seder as a progression, trying to get somewhere. We have Tsar, this idea that language is in Gullus, and then Pesach is really the redemption of language. Okay? What I'd like to talk about now is sort of the spiritual background for all of these things. Where do these concepts come from and originate? And to do that, we have to talk a little bit about Parshas Vayetze. So you're going to have to go back in time. What is it, like 3 months? And we're back in like the middle of Sefer Bereshis, and Yaakov is going down to see Lavan. Can you all get into that like conceptual space for a minute?
Okay.
Okay. It helps if you have a Tanakh in front of you. You can actually take a look at it, but if not, I'll try to walk you through it. So in Parshas Vayetze, you get a lot of stones. You have the beginning of the Parsha, Yaakov goes to sleep and he puts stones around his head. You have at the end of the Parsha, Yaakov and Lavan part ways, and there's this monument of stones that they make, and Lavan calls the stones Yagar Sadusa, and Yaakov calls the pile of stones Gal Eid, which basically means the exact same thing. One's in Aramaic, the other's in Hebrew, but they both mean this pile of stones could be a testimony between the two of them. And even in the middle of the parsha, you have Yaakov when he meets Rachel. So it's by the well, and he has to pop off the stone, right? So you've got stones thematically throughout the whole parsha. But what is interesting about those stones is that they're not just there; they're always there to do something that is protective in some way. The stones are protecting Yaakov's head. The pile of stones is serving as like a boundary so that Lavan won't come and hurt Yaakov, and Yaakov won't come and hurt Lavan. The stone is protecting the well. That seems to be what the stones are there for. So we'll have to figure out why that is. But the other question is, why does Yaakov need to rename the pile of stones that Lavan named? So just to like give you the picture, Yaakov runs away. Lavan comes chasing after him and has this dream, and God says, don't mess with him. And Lavan says, look, I just wanted to kiss my grandkids goodbye. Let's make a monument between us. You won't pass over, towards me, and I won't go over towards you. Here's a big pile of stones. We're going to call it Yagar Sadusa, which means these stones should be a testimony. And Yaakov says, I'm with you, but it's not called Yagar Sadusa, it's called Gal Eid. So he basically takes the Aramaic and translates it into Hebrew. What is the point of doing something like that? Any takers on either of those, either the stone theme or the translation?
I mean, the stone thing, that's how they made a deal back then.
That is definitely how they made a deal. But we see the stones is not just there for the deal, it's there as protection.
They were building a wall.
They were essentially building a wall, like, good fences make good neighbors, that kind of thing. Here's the demarcation. You don't step on my side of the line, I won't step on your side of the line. So what I'd like to suggest is that the two are the same, that if Yaakov is naming the pile of stones something, then he's also trying to protect what he's doing. Meaning, just like stones are thematic throughout the Parsha as not just stones, but as protection of something. So Yaakov saw that it was very important that this pile of stones be a protection. And the only way he figured he could do that is if he gives it a Hebrew name and doesn't just allow it to have an Aramaic name. So if we could take that premise and dig into it, I think it becomes very insightful, because there are three things that the Jewish people didn't change in Galus Mitzrayim. Has anyone heard this before? Three things the Jewish people didn't change?
Yeah,
what
their names, their clothing.
The names of clothing. I didn't hear the third.
Their dress and their language?
Language, yes. So names, clothing, and language. So names and clothing we'll leave for a different time, but language is what I think Yaakov is trying to protect over here. Because if you think about it for a minute, really the entire Haggadah is based around this interaction between Yaakov and Lavan. The main part of the Haggadah that we spend the whole night really talking about is not like you would expect. The Haggadah would basically just be ripped out of Vayera, Bo, and Bashalach. It's not. There's almost next to no content in there about Yetzias Mitzrayim per se. Like, we get to the Makos and we just say the Makos, 1, 2, 3. And if that wasn't fast enough, we have like the Tachadash Basab. We don't talk about the Makos. What we do talk about is Arami Ovid Avi. We talk about the encounter between Yaakov and Lavan. That's what the Haggadah is about, right? And the halacha is that, like, the more you darshan Arami Ovid Avi, the better. That's what we're spending our whole time doing, is talking about this interaction between Yaakov and Lavan. It's weird. No, doesn't that strike you as strange?
Yeah.
So I think what's going on is going to relate back to what we talked about before in terms of language. The Sfarim talk about stones. They talk about the letters of Lashon Kodesh as being a type of stone. The way we would call that today is like it's the building blocks of language, right? And really, in Lashon HaKodesh, the letters themselves are like seen as a creative force. Meaning, when words are put together, it's not like in English where it's just spelled however it's spelled. There are reasons why this letter is put next to that letter in Lashon Kodesh. So this term gal aid that Yaakov uses, that word gal, stone, is a very loaded word. The Shulchan Aruch actually brings down, you might see this at the beginning of, like if you open up a Gemara to the inside page, not even the pages, the inside cover, there is a tefillah there that they include in most Gemaras about gal einai v'avita niflaos mitorasecha. That and that's from the Shulchan Aruch. It's basically it's a tefillah that you're saying gal einai, that my eyes should be open to see the niflaos of Hashem's Torah. But it uses that same lashon of gal, and that really, that gimel lamed is also the storage of the Megillah, right? That's the same idea of to be megaleh, to reveal something. That comes from this idea of using gal, using the stones or the building blocks of language properly. That's what gal is all about. That's what Yaakov is doing when he renames Yagar Sadusa gal aid. Is he's saying, I'm refusing to change my language, right? If Yaakov's encounter, if that's really the shorish of what Yetzias Mitzrayim is going to be about and what the Geula is going to be about, Yaakov is putting his foot down and saying, we're not using Aramaic, we're using Lashon HaKodesh. And Lashon HaKodesh, the building blocks of that are gal. They are these stones, these components, the letters of the Aleph Beis. That's what Yaakov is trying to protect by using Lashon HaKodesh specifically. Is that clear? If you want to look for like a counterpart to that, we have by Galus Yavan. So the Jewish people were forced to translate the Torah into another language, and suddenly there's Choshech, right? The Gemara says that when they created the Septuagint, the Shivim Zakanim were put into different rooms, and they translated the Torah. There was darkness for 3 days. The reason there's darkness is because you've now like let loose that concept of Lashon HaKodesh is the language of the Torah. Now you're separating that. You're breaking up, so to speak, the gal, the stones. And actually, there's an interesting phrase in Chazal when you see when someone is like displeasing the Talmidei Chachamim, it says they look at him and they turn him into gal shel atzamos. They turn him into a pile of bones, right? Have you ever seen that phrase? No. Well, you'll have to take my word for it. There's a couple of times that it happens, especially with Rav Yochanan. But it's the idea that they're reducing the person back into his essence, back into the building blocks of who he is, because he's not, the summation of the person is not functioning properly. So they basically deconstruct the person back into a gal, back into the component parts, the blocks, the stones of who he is. So the true beginning of Galus Mitzrayim was really Galus Lavan. It was the Galus of Yaakov having to leave his home and go to Lavan and contend with the language issue that really underpinned the whole Galus of Mitzrayim. That's why Aramaic is it's a very interesting language. It's the language that we use to translate the Torah, because it has some aspect of Kedusha to it, but it also it's a mixture. It has Kedusha, but it has Chol. It's not like most of the other languages. So English is just Chol, right? You can say God in English and it doesn't carry any weight. But in Aramaic, you get this mixture, and that's where you start to run into problems when you take Kedusha and you add into it aspects that are Kadosh and aspects that are Chol. There's a danger there. That's why Chazal say that the Malachim can't understand Aramaic. They can't understand this concept that there's something that is Kadosh and not Kadosh at the same time. What's really interesting is that there's a medrash in Pirkei the Rebbe Eliezer. I have to see if I can pull it up. It's in chapter 17, and there HaKadosh Baruch Hu talks about there was kindness done by the people who live in Gilad. Gilad is Gal 8. That's the city that was built on that area where Lavan and Yaakov kind of parted ways. There was chesed that was done by them to Shaul and his sons, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu says that the ultimate redemption in the Yemos HaMashiach will start in the city of Gal 8, in Gilad, because of the chesed that they did with Shaul. But it's interesting that spot where Yaakov refused to allow the language to be changed, that's where the ultimate geula is going to come from. So that's a pretty good summary, I think, of what I wanted to cover. I think someone mentioned Chasal Seder Pesach, right? That's actually probably the most appropriate song. You guys have a Haggadah there?
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Who's up for singing Chasal Seder Pesach?
I'm up to hearing Chasal.
Nah, come on. You were supposed to be drinking this whole time. Who's got a good tune?
I don't even know what to sing. What, to sing it?
Yeah.
Why would you want someone to sing it? Just out of curiosity.
We all just kind of, I mean, in my Seder, we just sort of like drunkenly recite it and hope the words came out right, and then sleep. Sometimes at the table.
Okay, you can join in if you want. Otherwise, I'm going to sing the tune that I know.
So this is exciting for me.
Yeah, well, look, it's appropriate because it talks. I mean, the song talks about the Seder Pesach. That's what we were talking about the whole time. Is the fact that it's a Seder that's getting you to Nirtza.
Right. Words.
Kechol mishpato v'chukaso kasher zachinu l'sader oso kein nizke laso so zok shaychen ayna kaimem kahal adas mimana karav nahal nite kana peduyin l'tzion berina. That's the tune I know for Chasal.
That's awesome. Okay, Shimi, your turn. What's your tune?
Mine's much more of a funeral dirge. I'm not sure why my mother Allah Shalom always sang it. I'm not sure, but it was very somber. Chasal Sidur Pesach Gehil Chaso Kechol Mishpat Obechu Chaso Kasher Zachinu Sadero So Keinish Kela Chaso Zoshechem Yona Komim Kaladash Nimona it brought us to tears every time. I have no idea why.
Wow.
Wow.
Okay, moving on. So tell
any
us
other tunes? And anyone else have another tune for Chasal Seder Pesach?
I wish I had a cool Spanish tune for it, but I don't.
No, we don't sing. We just look at them in the back of the Haggadah.
Oh, you don't do
Lubavitcher
Nirtza.
thing.
Doesn't do Nirtza
Okay,
at
Shana
all.
Haba, Yerushalayim, and then that's pretty much it.
Yeah, they don't even have Nirtza.
Oh no, Nirtza. Oh man.
Yeah, they don't do it at all.
There's
They
no
do
song?
Lashana Haba and that's it.
That's it. There's no songs.
No. Right,
Oh,
Mel?
we have to get you over. We have to
No,
get you
but
over to us for Nirtza.
There is song, but that's just because I drank too much.
Yeah, no, but
Not
if you
like
look,
on
I
purpose.
have some Lubavitch Haggadahs, and they all just they stop. I mean, Nirtza just has Lashana Haba, and that's it. There's no Nirtza.
That's it.
No Nirtza.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
everyone is officially invited to my Seder for Nirtza. We have a lot of songs. I do all the Nirtza songs. Well, not all. I do a bunch of the Nirtza songs in Arabic for my father-in-law. I have Chagadia and Echad Miodea in Arabic.
Nice.
Is there a
So
real
if you-
stick involved? Like chasing around the
No.
table type of thing?
No, but we do. They don't do. I keep trying to get them to do the hitting everybody with onions. But we do the sack of matzah on the shoulder thing.
Mm-hmm.
That's good.
Right?
Yeah, no,
Sounds
they
good.
even have a whole there's like a whole like ask and respond in Arabic. They do bin gawin, bin wayin, like where are you coming from, where are you going to.
Right. Okay, so can I tell you something interesting? We've had this family minhag in my wife's family for years. I didn't know, I mean, generations already. And they would have this thing. They walk around the Seder plate. They do, and I'd heard of certain Sephardic minhagim like this, but they say, oh yeah, no, this is when now we're gonna do Bibi Lu. I'm like, what's Bibi Lu? And they start saying these things like, what are they saying? And like, oh no, they're saying Bibi Lu. I'm like, what is Bibi Lu? And this went on for years. And finally, I looked inside of one of their gutters. I'm like, it says Bivhilu Yatsanu Mitzrayim. Right?
Yeah.
Except that Rena's grandmother, who had picked up she grew up actually able to read Hebrew. Her husband was the one who could read Hebrew, and she passed on the traditions only on what she heard. And so she told everybody these words were Bibi Lu. And I'm like, is there like some Sephardic rabbi named Bibi Lu that I don't know about?
It's a question of BB King.
Like the Sephardic Elvis.
That's a funny story. Anyway.
Right?
Okay, so look, next week, if everyone's up for it, I'd like to continue. I don't know if we'll be able to do it in person. We'll have to do it online again. But next week is all about Yaakov. So please be prepared accordingly.
Okay, shkaya.
Okay.
Awesome. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Appreciate it.
All right, have a good
Excellent.
night, everybody.
Take care.
Bye.